today's live stream is about a huge verdict that came out in Florida, and so there was a few years ago, I guess back in March of 2022, there was a teenage boy named Tyre Sampson who tragically died when he fell out of an amusement park ride, and he was a very large kid, and they had to, I don't know, modify the harness or whatever, and he slipped out and fell like 100 and some feet. I mean, it sounds horrible. He was 14 years old, and so there was a trial, and I mean this no disrespect to the family at all, but I saw that there was a $310 million verdict, and so I wanted to look into that because I was very curious about it. I was trying to get a copy of the verdict, and I started reading the news reports, and I realized there was a lot more to this story than is being reported, and I wanted to share that with people. So I'm going to actually share the articles over on YouTube and Facebook if people want to go check that out. So what I'm going to do is read part of this, and if I get on the stage here, there we go. Okay. So I'm just kind of reading from the first article, and I really had to read a little bit to get to the kind of the truth of the matter here. So and this came out. When is this article? This either came out yesterday or today. Today being Friday, December 6th. So an Orange County jury decided Thursday evening that the manufacturer of the Orlando ride from which from a 14-year-old plunged to his death in 2022 should pay his parents $310 million. $310 million. And so I thought, wow. And so it goes on, it says the quick trial and verdict, and that caught my attention. It said the quick trial and verdict. It says jury selection began Thursday morning. So jury selection in a $310 million verdict began the same day that the verdict came out. That didn't make sense to me. Usually, I mean, I would think on a normal case, jury selection could take days, if not weeks, on a case of this magnitude. So that didn't make sense to me, but I kept reading. And then it says, so the quick trial and verdict, jury selection began only Thursday morning, put a strikingly high price tag on Tyre Sampson's March 2022 plummet from the Orlando free fall, a ride he was allowed to board despite exceeding its weight restrictions. He was like 350 pounds. He was a very big 14-year-old football player. The lawsuit was brought by his parents. And so the lawsuit named Fun Time, the Free Falls Austrian-based manufacturer. So the lawsuit was against the manufacturer of the ride. Okay, that's important. I'll get to that in a moment here. And then a German company, it's moving around because it wants me to subscribe. So it was the lawsuit was against Funtime, the freefall Austrian-based manufacturer, and German company Gerslauer Amusement Rides, which, according to court filings, was responsible for designing and inspecting the ride seats. So they sued the manufacturer of the ride and the designer of the ride, both foreign companies. That's really important here. I'll get to that in a minute. The jury ordered. The jury ordered Funtime to pay his parents $155 million each. And their attorney, Ben Crump, and attorney Natalie Jackson said in an emailed statement after the verdict that the outcome was a step toward holding corporations accountable for the safety of their products. Well, I'm not so sure about that, and I'll get to that here in a moment. It says the jury's decision confirms what we have long argued Tyree's death was the result of blatant negligence and a failure to prioritize safety over profits. The statement said that the ride's manufacturers neglected their duty to protect passengers, and today's outcome ensures they will face the consequences of those decisions. Probably not. Um, so I read through and I was like, something here does not make sense. I read all the way to the end of this article, and then I went to another article, which I'm going to put up here. Let's see. So there's another article. This is from the Associated Press. Um, the parents of a 14-year-old Missouri boy who fell to his death from an Orlando amusement park ride in 2022 have won $310 million verdict against the attraction's Australian builder. So I know from the other article that jury selection began Thursday morning, and so it says late Thursday. It doesn't say what time. The Orange County jury ordered the manufacturer, Funtime, to pay $155 million each to Tyre Sampson's parents. I'm not going to try and pronounce their names. Um, the trial lasted only a day as Funtime never appeared in court to defend itself. Okay, that's the key information here. Um, so, and that was really just kind of a passing sentence. I did not notice it when I read it. Actually, that was the third article I read. The second one, which I'm putting up now, um, also I don't think had any mention that the manufacturer had not shown. It did talk about an earlier settlement with a couple of I think the amusement park owner and maybe a company that operates it had settled earlier in the case, and it was just the manufacturer that was still in the case at trial. But neither of those other two articles mentioned that the manufacturer hadn't shown up, and it came up just briefly in one of the actual video clips, which I'm not going to bother to play here. But so, what does that mean? Why am I doing a stream on this? Because so it's a $310 million verdict in one day, which included jury selection. And most importantly, the defendant did not show up. Okay. And I'm trying to end the share here. Uh, come on. Come on, computer. You can do it. Um, okay. That's better. So the manufacturer did not show up, and they talked a little bit about how they're going to try and go to Austria, I guess, and try and enforce this U.S. judgment. Well, here's what I suspect happened, and I don't know anything about this case other than what I read in these three articles. I tried to go on and see if I could get a copy of the actual verdict. I wasn't able to find it on Westlaw, but it was a one-day trial, and the defendants didn't show up. And it looks like what they did primarily is they showed a video, and someone caught this tragedy on camera of this young man falling out of the ride. And like I said, it was over 100 feet, I believe. He fell. I can't even imagine what that's like. Um, but most likely, the manufacturer was never served, or did never admitted service, and never showed up. I've actually had that happen. I've seen that happen in lawsuits. I've had lawsuits involving manufacturers of water heaters that are, let's see, I think it was a South Korean company at one point in time was sued for faulty water heaters and didn't show up. And well, they defended themselves, but they challenged the jurisdiction of the U.S. courts over them. And that's probably what happened here is the company either never got served or refused to answer and never hired lawyers and never showed up and said, hey, they probably said, hey, we built this thing in Austria and we sold it wherever. We don't have any contacts with the state of Florida. You can't touch us there. And so probably made the decision to ignore this, believing that they can avoid paying this. and probably with the belief that this family will be unsuccessful in going over to a foreign court and trying to get it enforced. I have no idea what that process looks like. I've never tried to do that, but that looks to be like what they're trying to do is they basically got what I think is sort of a worthless verdict, um, and really more of a kind of a token verdict, if you will. Again, I am in no way trying to minimize what this family went through or suggesting that their loss is not worth this. It probably was. What happened to him was horrible. But a judgment like that, a verdict like that, typically takes place after an actual trial, weeks, weeks of testimony, days of jury selection, all kinds of arguments. That would be what you would expect to see with a verdict like this. But when lawyers show up, pick the jury, and argue without anyone there on the other side to challenge it, and then get a verdict of $310 million, I'm just here to say I don't know that that verdict means much, if anything. If anything, that kind of verdict can backfire and can be a bad thing for the legal system, because those kinds of verdicts, if you didn't read into it and see that the other side had not shown up, you could very easily, that's the kind of stuff that tort reform is built on. Tort reform is like damage caps and shortening statutes of limitations and all that kind of stuff. Things that insurance companies do to try to avoid what they call runaway juries. Like, this would be referred to as a runaway jury. And so they will probably move for legislation to say we can't have this happen again. That will bankrupt companies. So we need to cap damages. Let's say they implement a cap of $5 million or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that comes out of these verdicts, because these verdicts are misleading. And even the news reports really don't seem to capture the fact that this is not really a $310 million verdict. It just doesn't mean anything if the other side doesn't show up, if it's just one day of testimony, and maybe not even testimony, maybe just this tragic video. It's a verdict that's made a lot of news, but really doesn't mean anything, and in fact could be a bad thing, because then it it just lends ammunition to those who want tort reform, and that's such a horrible thing, because then people really can't get justice. So I want to share that, and I'm going to share one other thing real quick here for those that are on YouTube or Facebook. I'm going to show what this reminded me of for those of us here in Wisconsin was back in, was it '06? I'm trying to remember when it was. It was the Miller Park crane collapse. It was the Big Blue crash. So Miller Park is the home of the now it's is it called it's called is it called American Family Field now? But at the time it was Miller Park. It's where the Milwaukee Brewers play baseball, and it has this retractable roof. And during the construction of this roof panel, this huge blue crane, I think it was called Big Blue, collapsed with some workers, I don't know, either suspended on the piece or somewhere up in the structure of this thing. The wind blew this crane over, and three or four workers fell to their death. And it was like let me see here. I'm just looking at it here. It was like a $99.25 million verdict, most of which was punitive damages. I feel like maybe 90 million was punitive damages, and then like 9 million was um, compensatory damages. And part of the basis for that, even that large compensatory damage, which is the actual damage, the actual losses to the men and their families, the workers and their families, was the fact that they had probably 3, 4, 5 seconds of active free fall awareness of their plight. Um, and it was all caught on video. And so I believe that a lot of the damages were the fact that these men once things started to collapse, realized they were going to die and had a few seconds to think about it. Um, and that kind of made me think of this verdict, and so I was curious if that's why that was the verdict was so high, and it may very well be what the jury was thinking. But when the other side doesn't show up, there's no other lawyers, no other experts, and the evidence is less than a day. That doesn't tell us much about the case, and so I don't know if this verdict will ever be challenged. It looks like the manufacturer has decided to hide behind its European status and hope that that protects them. So it'll be an interesting one to follow. But if you see these reports, realize that there's just more to the story than the news outlets seem to be aware of or seem to care enough about to look into. So I wanted to share that with you guys. If people have any questions about that, let me see if there's any questions on. I don't even know how to check for comments on TikTok. Sorry about that. Appreciate you guys doing. That's my first time live streaming to you to TikTok. I've been live streaming on YouTube for a while. So anyway, want to share that with you guys. If you have any questions about any of that, leave a comment. I'll be happy to come back and try and clean it up. I'll put links to the videos that that I read referenced in the video. I'll try to put links to those in the descriptions or in the comments so people can read that for themselves if they want to. So anyway, that's all I have. I appreciate everyone who watched, and until next time, everyone, have a good one.